Beijing slaps Washington with counter tariffs after President Trump's extra 10% levies on Chinese imports take effect. The U.S. strikes a deal with Mexico and Canada to delay tariffs in return for increased border controls. People in Taiwan scramble to get a flu shot after celebrity Barbie Hsu's death from flu-related pneumonia. Plus, celebrating world literature, Taipei's annual International Book Fair is back and in full swing. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. China has hit back against new U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods with its own duties on a range of American imports. Beijing says U.S. coal and liquefied natural gas will be subject to tariffs of 15% from February 10th, while crude oil, farm equipment, and some cars will be slapped with 10% import fees. They're in response to President Donald Trump's additional 10% tariffs on Chinese imports. Luis Watt has been following this story for us from our Taipei newsroom. Luis, is this the start of a new trade war?
Well, Leslie, it could be, but I think we could see it more as each side making their opening move ahead of possible negotiations. Now, Trump has just come to power, but let's not forget, during his campaign, when he designated China an economic competitor, he pledged to put tariffs of 60% or more on China. Well, instead, his opening move is 10%. Those tariffs came into force today. Beijing reacted with its own tariffs on a range of U.S. goods, and it also took aim at some American companies. Google, for instance, now faces an antitrust investigation. But let's take a step back from the tariffs for a moment, because there are loads of points of contention between the US and China. Now, the trade imbalance is in China's favor, but apart from that, there's the issue of fentanyl, which Donald Trump, he accuses China of not doing enough to stem the flow of that drug into the US. And for Beijing, the most critical issue in bilateral relations is US arms sales to Taiwan. So there are these points of disagreement, but there are also areas where the US and China could work together. Donald Trump has said that he wants to reach a trade deal with China, and he hopes to get Beijing's help in ending the war in Ukraine. And China's economic slowdown is going on. Beijing doesn't want to see a new round of a trade war going on. So that's why I say the two have made their opening moves. There's still a lot to play for. And Xi Jinping and Donald Trump are expected to have a phone call later this week. So on that phone call, or in the weeks and months ahead, perhaps they can negotiate a way to avoid a new big trade war.
And Trump has threatened tariffs of up to 100% on computer chips imported from Taiwan. How is Taipei reacting to that?
Well, Taiwan's foreign ministry today, without mentioning China, drew a very clear line between its relationship with the US and Taiwan's own relationship. At a press conference, a foreign ministry spokeswoman said that Taiwan and the US are partners with similar values and ideas, and stressed that Taiwan is a reliable partner of the US and not a competitor. But of course, the idea of tariffs on semiconductors is worrying to Taiwan. But let's not forget that Taiwan makes most of the world's most advanced chips. And certainly, analysts here think that chip makers would pass on any additional costs to their American customers, and in turn, those costs would be borne by American consumers. So certainly, analysts here think that any tariffs on Taiwanese chips would backfire and have unintended consequences in the US.
All right, well, thanks for that update, Luis. That was Luis Watt live for us from Taipei Newsroom. Meanwhile, Trump has agreed to a 30-day pause on tariffs he's threatened to impose on Mexico and Canada after the true trading partners agreed to boost enforcement along their borders with the U.S. The pause will give the sides time to hammer out a resolution to what could still be a looming trade dispute. Rosie Greninger has the latest.
A deal to delay tariffs is struck just hours before US President Donald Trump's sweeping duties were set to hit two of the US's biggest trading partners. After speaking with their US counterpart, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced the tariffs will be delayed for at least 30 days.
Me preguntó que cuánto tiempo quería poner en pausa. Le dije, bueno, pues vamos a ponerlo en pausa para siempre. Y me dijo, bueno, pues ¿cuánto tiempo? Le dije, bueno, vamos a ponerlo en pausa un mes y estoy segura que en este mes vamos a poder dar resultados, buenos resultados a su pueblo, buenos resultados al pueblo de México.
Under the deal, Mexico agreed to send 10,000 National Guard troops to the US border to stem illegal drugs moving into the United States. And just hours later, a similar agreement with Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took to social media to say his country would implement a $1.3 billion plan to reinforce the border and appoint a new czar to combat the import of fentanyl. This after Trump claimed Canada and Mexico failed to prevent the movement of migrants and illegal drugs into the US. It puts a temporary end to a brewing trade war in North America, where Mexico and Canada had threatened retaliation for Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on all goods from both countries. Negotiations are set to take place over the next month to try and find a solution that does not include tariffs. But Trump's global trade war is not over.
But when you're the pot of gold, the tariffs are very good. They're very powerful, and they're going to make our country very rich again.
An additional 10% tariff still went into force on Chinese imports into America. Trump also citing illegal drug imports for that levy. Trump is set to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the next 24 hours, saying if a deal cannot be struck, those tariffs will be substantial. He has also not backed away from his trade threats against the European Union. After EU leaders met in Brussels, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said they are open for dialogue with the US, but won't be pushed around.
And again, when targeted, unfairly or arbitrarily, the European Union will respond firmly.
Economists warn Trump's proposed tariffs may backfire, possibly leading to higher inflation and higher costs in the US, something Trump promised US voters he would reduce.
Il perd sa crédibilité parce qu'il renie des accords commerciaux qu'il avait lui-même signés lors de son premier mandat. Il va augmenter les coûts pour les consommateurs américains. Il va faire apprécier le dollar.
But as Wall Street ended Monday's trading down, rattled international markets partially recovered from their losses after Trump backed down from some of his tariff threats. But with more trade sanctions on the horizon, investors will be watching what Trump does next. Eason Pan and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's economy ministry has promised help for Taiwanese businesses operating in Mexico that could be impacted by possible U.S. tariffs.
美国总统大选后的贸易政策变化将持续影响全球经贸的环境。我们要未雨绸缪，为台商以及企业提供更完善的支持。
The ministry says it will set up consultation services and relocation support for the more than 300 Taiwanese companies that operate in Mexico. Those include some of the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturers whose exports could be affected if Donald Trump follows through on his threat of a 25% tax on Mexican goods. But tech leaders are also anticipating further tariffs that could more directly affect Taiwan.
美国政府下一波应该就是会针对台湾啊，特别是半导体，强迫台湾的这些晶圆厂还有相关的供应链搬到美国去制造。
As reported before, Trump has delayed implementing those 25% tariffs on both Canada and Mexico by a month, pending negotiations. Taipei Mayor Jiang Wan'an has slammed the decision to deny entry to a delegation from the Shanghai City branch of the Taiwan Affairs Office, calling it regrettable. Jiang says he hopes the central government will improve communication with China. The delegation was meant to attend the annual Taipei Lantern Festival, which normally includes a Shanghai exhibit. But the Mainland Affairs Council says the Shanghai TAO's application came too late this year and that the branch has been blocking Taiwanese business people from returning to Taiwan. People in Taiwan are mourning celebrity Barbie Hsu, who died from complications from the flu, aged 48. Her death has led to concerns over the severity of the virus and a rush to get vaccinated. Chelsea Wu has more on this story.
An outpouring of grief for Taiwanese actor Barbie Hsu, who died while traveling in Japan, aged just 48. Also known as Big S, she was known as a TV host in Taiwan and for her role in the hit drama Meteor Garden back in 2001. Her death has sent shockwaves through the public, especially among her longtime friends and colleagues from the entertainment industry.
心里面也是觉得很难过，很年轻，天妒红颜，10几年的同事，只能心中为他们祷告，加油，大 S， 一路好走。
She died from complications from influenza that developed into pneumonia. While she contracted the virus in Japan, Taiwan is facing its worst flu outbreak in a decade, and Xi's death has led to a surge of people seeking vaccination.
一开始没有，就是不会想说哦，有流感的那个通知就要去打疫苗。那但是因为有这个新闻，会觉得说，哎，好像要注意一下，因为流感其实可能并发症会蛮严重。
我阿孙女就跟我讲说，哎，妈妈这个是阿嬷这个是大新闻呢，然后大家要小心呐。然后他跟我说他有打针。
早上我才知道有艺人因为这样，然后所以就过世，所以我想就尽快来施打。
Taiwan's Centers for Disease Control held an emergency press conference to address the flu outbreak, which has affected not just Asia, but also Europe and the Americas. Officials urged Taiwanese travelers to get vaccinated before heading abroad. While the public has taken Hsu's death from the flu seriously, not everyone can get government-funded flu vaccines. Many clinics have already run out, with only about 200,000 doses remaining nationwide.
疫苗的部分，每年流感是10月开始施打这样子啊，其实到2月、3月已经是施打的尾巴了这样子啊，所以疫苗大概也已经打得几乎都打得差不多了。
Barbie Hsu's death is a painful reminder of the flu's potential danger, and with flu cases on the rise and vaccine supplies running low, the Taiwanese public will have to act quickly to protect themselves from the outbreak. Ryan Wu and Chelsea Wu for TaiwanPlus.
The Taipei Book Exhibition has begun with Italy as the guest of honor. This year, there were also discussions and activities involving AI. Cadence Quaranto reports.
Rows and rows of books inside Taipei's World Trade Center as the city's annual International Book Fair, one of the world's largest, begins. This year's fair showcases books from across the world. One of its core goals, cultural exchange.
因为其实台湾是一个岛，那我们很需要跟大家一起交流，而且台湾有这个很丰富的这个创作的这个能量，所以呢，我们应该让世界都看到台湾好的作品，然后我们也应该让台湾的朋友们看到世界上有这么多丰富的文化，所以来书展不只是阅读书，它其实也是一种文化的体验。
3, 2, 1. Running for 6 days, this book fair has in the past attracted over 500,000 visitors, often including Taiwan's president. This year, no different, as President Lai Ching-te took part in the fair's opening ceremony, echoing the importance of the publishing industry and the book fair in spreading Taiwanese culture.
文化是国家的根，那也是台湾的灵魂。那我非常感谢我们出版界哈。 是传达文化最重要的工作者。
Every year, the fair chooses one country as its guest of honor. This year is Italy, in part, officials said, because Italian culture is influential across the world, including in Taiwan. Their book fair pavilion was designed to feel like a town square, Italian books filling the walls. This year, the fair will also incorporate discussions about AI and its impact, and activities involving the technology.
In this area, visitors can get a book written for them by AI. All they have to do is put in a few preferences on an iPad, and they'll get a short story passage like this.
The organizers had Taiwanese authors think of new book ideas and write around 1,600 characters introducing the books they came up with, which they then fed into ChatGPT, along with commands like include dialogue. ChatGPT generates a different passage for each visitor, based on which book title and which author they choose. As AI has become more widely used, many authors have raised concerns, warning it will threaten their livelihoods and worrying their work could be used to train AI models who will then imitate their writing, with some even demanding compensation. But here, at the Taipei Book Fair, many were more optimistic, including the curator of this area, who doesn't believe AI will ever stop humans from writing.
我倒不觉得害怕，因为唯一不会被取代的就是写作的乐趣。我自己是小说写作者，我知道小说写作的乐趣是什么。好，即使有一天 AI 写的比我好了，它不会剥夺我写小说的乐趣。
Another author, who writes children's picture books, said he feels writers can use AI as a tool, but need to find ways to use it constructively.
我一直并不反对那种善用科技带给我们的一些执行上的一个便利性，就是我们要思考怎么善用它这样子。
With others, excited to see what new ideas the technology can produce.
我觉得AI 也是由人来操作的，所以它可能还是会有人的意志存在，还是会有作者的一个意念去控制这个 AI 的创作，所以我还蛮期待用这样新的技术，然后作家可以创造出什么样不同的一个故事感。
Whatever the opinions of the public, it's clear AI will be used more and more as it becomes better trained and as new models emerge, which will continue to impact writers and the publishing industry at large. Justin Wu and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, meet the family in Japan growing their own vegetables as the price of fresh produce surges.
Oh, and you two, come. I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Oh.
May the year of the snake inspire new beginning.
Bringing you transformation, peace, prosperity,
health, wealth, and all things wonderful.
Wishing you a healthy and prosperous year of the snake.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Bringing in the new year with Rattle and Charm. TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he is now the acting head of USAID, the agency that distributes billions of U.S. dollars in aid around the world. The agency is being dismantled by Republican President Donald Trump, who says it is wasteful and could be fraudulent. But Democrats are vowing to fight back. Rick Loud reports.
Staff at the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, were told not to come in for work here on Monday. Its headquarters in Washington, D.C. instead became a site for protest.
What do we do? Stand up, fight back!
At the dismantling of the $40 billion US budget foreign aid agency by President Donald Trump and his billionaire ally Elon Musk.
And just like Elon Musk did not create USAID, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him.
We're here today not only to fight for federal employees who dedicate themselves every day to a humanitarian task. We are here to save lives, because that is what AID does.
The last few weeks have seen spending cut off, staff furloughed, and the website taken offline. The eradication of an agency that has for decades funded education and fought disease internationally is proving particularly controversial. Congressional Democrats say the shutdown is illegal and have vowed to fight it in court. Trump defended it as part of his efforts to shrink federal government spending, saying Musk, who is running the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, has found waste and fraud at the agency.
It's something that should have been done a long time ago. It went crazy during the Biden administration. They went totally crazy what they were doing, and the money they were giving to people that shouldn't be getting it and to agencies and others that shouldn't be getting it. It was a shame. So they're tremendous fraud.
Trump said a future report would detail Musk's findings, but for now, US-funded humanitarian aid programs in more than 100 countries from Ukraine to South Africa have come to an abrupt halt. The US is the largest provider of foreign aid in the world, and there are concerns that other international actors could move into spaces now left vacant.
So the US is actually currently involved in an intense and intensifying competition, a geostrategic competition, largely with China, but also with other adversaries around the world. By taking these steps, these drastic, draconian steps with regard to US foreign aid, it actually could have the effect of ceding the battleground or ceding the playing ground, if you will, and others will very enthusiastically fill that void.
Trump campaigned and won the presidency on a platform of putting America first and shaking up the federal government. His decisive move in his first weeks in office to dismantle USAID is sending out shockwaves at home and abroad. Hank Hsu and Rick Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's military has reportedly started training to use the first batch of US-made Abrams tanks. Local media report that soldiers have been undergoing classroom training since December. Last year, the military sent personnel to the US to develop training manuals for the tanks. In December, Taiwan received the first batch of 38 tanks out of the 108 it purchased in 2019. The Abrams tanks are expected to be ready to enter service in the second half of this year. Thousands of Queensland residents are returning to their homes after torrential rain flooded parts of the Australian state over the weekend, killing at least one person. Queensland Premier David Crisafulli described the damage caused by the floods as incredible, but said that many had dodged a bullet after floodwaters expected on Tuesday did not materialize. More than 8,000 properties remain without power. In honor of World Cancer Day, Taiwan's president has pledged additional funding for cancer screenings.
今年呢，我们增加了40亿元的公务预算，让癌症的筛检预算达到60亿元以上。
Starting next year, Taiwan's public screening program will add stomach cancer to the existing 5 screening services, estimated to benefit nearly 2 million people. Health officials stress the importance of early detection and treatment to reduce cancer mortality rates. The disease has been Taiwan's top killer for over 40 years. The price of fresh produce in Japan is skyrocketing, with a head of cabbage now more expensive than pork. But one family has found a way to beat inflation and boost their veggie intake at the same time. Harrell Hughes has more.
Kazuki Nakata carefully tends to the green onions, growing in the small yard outside his home in Kawasaki, Japan. What started as a hobby during the COVID-19 pandemic has now grown to 47 types of vegetables, thriving in bottles, cans, even the basket of his bicycle. And it's become a valuable food source for his family as inflation takes hold.
もともとこう家計用っていうところ発信スタートじゃなかったんですけど、今となってはすごいこう物価が値段が上がってて、で今こう家計にもかなりこう助かってるのかなっていうのを考えると、この趣味やっててよかったなっていうのは最近思いますね。
The cost of living in Japan skyrocketed in 2024, particularly for fresh produce. One of Japan's staple vegetables, cabbage, has tripled in price over the past year and is now more expensive than pork. Broccoli, lettuce, and other veggies also surged in price and have become unaffordable for many households. As a result, Japanese adults are eating less vegetables than ever before. But not the Nakata family.
作るようになってやっぱり今日これ取れるからダメになっちゃう前にとかでこうやっぱりこう野菜がこれができるからじゃあこのレシピにしようかって言って家でご飯食べるっていうのが増えたのでだいぶ生活費ので変わったの食費が大きく変わりましたね。
The family has been documenting their home garden on YouTube, quickly gaining thousands of followers as viewers search for affordable answers to inflation. And the Nakata family is eager to share the benefits.
自分で種から育てた野菜なんで、もう美味しさ、通常よりも美味しさも何倍も美味しく感じるし、愛情込めた野菜だからね、なんかやっぱ違うなっていう感じがしますね。
The Nakata's success in home gardening is inspiring others to follow suit, to combat the rising cost of veggies and close the gap between the garden and the plate. Scott Huang and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, brighten up your evening with images of the Copenhagen Light Festival, bringing some light to the northern city for 3 weeks during the long, dark winter months. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.